You are listening to Ace Comicals. I'm Greg Driver. I'm joined by Rahul Johnny and Leon Everett. Let's go! Abandon all hope, ye who enter here. All the demons of Arkham are turning Gotham into the capital city of hell. Pandemonium in every sense of the word. Presiding over it all, Bane and his cabal, like Satan and his peers. And Batman's real torment is just beginning. A torment designed to specifically and brutally break him. Mentally and physically. Not just kill the Batman, no. To utterly destroy him. Yes, that's right, we're back with Knightfall Part 2. And this is Ace Comicals presents Knightfall Part 2, The Broken Bat. Joining us today, we have Marv again as a guest.
Hello, everyone.
And the usual suspect co-hosts, Rahul.
Evening, everyone.
And Leon.
Hey.
Don't know why, always point off to the left and right when I say your names.
Do you look up like a Brady Bunch type thing?
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So yes, here we are to discuss Knightfall Part 2. Now today, what we are hoping to do is to guide you through Batman Volume 1, issues 491 to 497, and Detective Comics Volume 1, issues 659 to 664. So, depending on which version of the Knightfall, depending on how you're reading Knightfall, which version of the Knightfall trade you have, Omnibuy, whatever, this is either approximately just halfway through, like it is in my volume, so you're either approximately just halfway through the first volume by the end of this, or if you have the collection that Marv has, then this is Knightfall Part 1. Because the way that Marv is currently reading this, so just to kind of explain, so the Knightfall storyline has been printed and released in several different ways. The versions I have are 3 big tomes where you've got Knightfall, Night Quest, and Night's End in 3, which are the 3 sort of like main portions and the main ways that they group the Knightfall comics, as it were. Marv has the first, what is my first book is Marv's first 2 books. So Marv has what I have broken in half.
How appropriate.
Enough, yeah.
See what I did there? Yeah, so what we're going to discuss today is the first of the 2 storylines that make up the overall Knightfall portion of the Knightfall, Night's Quest, Night's End, Knightfall saga, as it were. So we're discussing the portion named Broken Bat. And with this episode, we aim to carry you all the way through this into the beginning of the next portion of the Knightfall thing, which is Knightfall Part 2, which, if you're reading it the way Marv is your second book, which is Who Rules the Night? The next story in line. The version, like I said before, the version I have collects both stories as one volume, and it's confusing. So we've had this whole thing where it's been like, so what version have you been reading? Because this is kind of my fault as a host, because like peek behind the curtain time, I thought I had everybody on the same page, but obviously not. So, but everyone, right now we are all on the same page. We're fine. So we're good to go. Yes.
Yeah, and in your defense, this is bonkers, the amount of different versions there are. I just wanted to point out the version that I'm reading off of Comixology includes a bunch of the stuff we discussed in the last episode. So, like, I think it was Vengeance of Bane and some of the Prelude to Nightfall stuff is in this volume.
You have a digital version of what I have.
Right, okay.
Yeah. So, this is basically... So as we've kind of like touched on last time, and as we will discuss as we get further into this, and as we get into the next few parts of the Knightfall saga, the overarching thing that is Knightfall, we basically what we're seeing here with these events that have been happening at the time, around this time and everything else, is DC writers and editors using this event as an excuse to explore the popularity and reception of a more violent Batman, a Batman willing to kill his enemies, also exploring what it is that makes a good Batman and a good crime fighter or detective. So obviously what we're going to see eventually is we're going to see Jean-Paul Valley taking up the mantle of Batman, and we're going to move on from there with Jean-Paul Valley's tenure as Batman. But today we are focusing on the breaking of the bat. So, I mean, as far as this goes, like, Doug Moench and Chuck Dixon have crafted this amazing journey down the spiral into what I see when I read these books, the true depths of hell. Like, almost as if Batman's entire career, this portion here, this is like, so last episode we finished on the Arkham breakout. We finished on the panel of Batman screaming into the sky in frustration and pure exhaustion and everything else. I mean, if you thought he'd been through the ringer after the last episode, you wait until you hear some of the stuff we've got to say he has to deal with this time, because it gets intense. So, yeah, like, almost as if Batman's entire career is flashing before his eyes. He has to go through a gauntlet comprised of his entire rogues gallery in this weakened and beaten state. Like this marathon of violence and madness that just gets more and more and more intense. Like, and what I love about this is it is his whole career as a crime fighter up to this point laid bare in preparation for what is to come. And we begin with the Mad Hatter. So after the Arkham breakout, the first of Batman's rogues to kind of like rear his head in a significant way is the Mad Hatter. And we begin with a familiar scheme, this kind of like relatively goofy Mad Hatter scheme, this relatively goofy setup in a way, and from here it slowly gets more dangerous. And with this, like, this Hatter scheme as well, there's something, me talking about this whole thing showcasing Batman's entire career, there's something even like golden or even Silver Age about this, and in the way that Batman and Robin deal with it as well, but then that's tarnished in the amount of violence and everything else that's in it. It's like unpolished, uncared for silver, so the type of silver that would probably send Alfred off the deep end into a haze of Mr. Sheen and muttering rants about proper cleaning and care of such artifacts. But, you know, and it's just because the peril is intensified, and it's like, it's a Silver Age scheme, but it's brought forward into the dirty future, if you understand what I'm trying to get at, with the way that the Hatter is using his, you know, his usual shtick of inviting people to a tea party and then putting them under some kind of mind control. But there's like this long shadow to it, and there's deeper darkness to it, this actual death. And obviously, like, later, so Batman is, you know, he finds out about this scheme through listening out for weird crimes on the radio while he's driving around with Robin, which is a little bit, I mean, that for me feels like Silver Age Batman and Robin a little bit. And, we have like this, this like second stringer, the film freak, is kind of working with the Hatter here, and so that the film freak's whole thing is he does crimes based on famous films. That's literally his whole thing, and he was an Arkham inmate, and he likes to pretend he's characters in certain films, so that's how he does what he does. He takes on the persona of a character from a film and acts like that character would, and that's how he commits his crimes. And we are taken through this kind of like Mad Hatter experience. Batman barely manages to hold it together because he's already weakened and beaten and everything else that came from what he went through with the prelude to Knightfall, the lead up to this, the things we discussed in the previous episode. And we get the breaking of the film freak as a warning of what is to come. This is like, for me, the last signpost, if you will, screaming turn back on the way to the edge of the cliff, you know, like forget about it. Just forget about it, Batman. Just give up and take up sewing, man. You just don't do it anymore. It's not worth it. Bane's too big and too strong. So let's dive into it. So we'll start with the guest, Marv. So where are we at with you with this?
With this section, the Mad Hatter part, like what strikes me most, like especially with our conversation that we had with the prelude to Knightfall, and the way that some of it sort of zigged and zagged, Vengeance of Bane being a very tight story, and then you had stuff with like Black Mask being like a bit wishy-washy. Like we'll come back to it again and again as we carry on talking about the other sections of this tome, but each inmate, each rogue that Batman faces ties intrinsically back into Bane, back into the story, back into the plan, back into the gauntlet, and it's done so well, so expertly, that even though this moves at such a peg, it's almost like every panel is important. And I love that, like, basically on page 3 of this, you've got the Mad Hatter, who, you know, for all intents and purposes, is not like the highest level Batman villain. You know, you're not going to write home about, oh, I just saw that Mad Hatter's going to be in the new Christopher Nolan movie or whatever. But he's important in that he's, you know, he's looked up, he's seen Bird's Falcon, and, you know, straight from there, you're like, Bird's on the case, which means that Bane is overseeing all of this. Like the all-seeing eye is there from page 3 of this giant story that we're going on this adventure that we're going on.
Did we say last time how much of a style icon Bird is?
I remember you having a lot of love for his mullet.
He looks like a young Rod Stewart. I mean, even in the way he's dressed, it's like he's wearing one of Rod Stewart's stage outfits. I love it. He's so like he's a bit piratey. He's got that bird flying around with him. It's like but then you look at the other guys in Bane's troop. You look at Trog, who's just wearing military fatigues, and then you look at Zombie, who's sharply dressed, and you just think there's absolutely no need for it, Bird. Like, honestly. It's like, why?
He's definitely the most interesting of the trio.
He's the most flamboyant of the...
Yeah.
He's got his a ruffled shirt. I mean, come on.
Yeah, he's part Funhouse host, part pirate. He's really sort of rocking the split look.
Oh my god, yes! If we were going to do a live action, it would be Pat Sharp.
Yeah,
it would be late 80s, early 90s Pat Sharp to play Bird. Definitely, yeah. So yeah, I mean, like, Bird's like watching, and it's all. So what you were saying there, Marv, is you were getting at the point that it was basically like we've had all the tributary trees like feed into one now single body of water, and the water's running fast.
We're coming to the lip of the waterfall.
Exactly, but we've got to the point now where it's all one cohesive story, rather than us getting several different chunks at a time, story arcs. This is all one big story arc now. It's not little bits that we have to dissect. Like last time, it's not little bits and pieces in, and we've got this, the overarching theme last time was Batman's exhaustion, but what we were getting is we were getting like little chunks here and there of different things, of Batman dealing with different like loose ends that he was tying up almost in preparation for this gauntlet with Bane, because what happens now begins with the breakout at Arkham, and this is everyone just flooding onto the streets. This is like Gotham becoming Pandemonium, and it's like it's part of the plan. This is like Bane has done this to create a smokescreen so that he can observe Batman, which further cements my belief that Bane is the true anti-Batman. Like, and also possibly Batman's most dangerous foe. Like, he's cold, he's calculating, he's a criminal mastermind, he's a master technician, he's the perfect match for someone such as Batman, the ever-prepared master detective, the meticulous planner. And, like, in the pages, as we'll see throughout this, like, when we move on from Hatter and we go into the other sections of this book, it's proven again and again that like, Bane is pretty much the anti-Batman, and he even has his own... his own allies, like Batman would. And it's just yeah, it's just mind blowing how people sometimes relegate Bane, like in their minds. Like if you talk to people that are comic fans, that are movie fans, that are Batman fans, people don't necessarily think of Bane as this true match for Batman, this criminal mastermind. They're just like, oh well, he's big and tough, and that's his thing. And people tend to put the Joker at the top of the pile as far as Batman's most dangerous foes go, but I actually think Bane's more dangerous than the Joker, because the Joker, while he is dangerous and while he is, you know, he is a criminal mastermind, he's unbridled chaos, whereas Bane is focused to a sharp point. And it's that makes Bane so much more dangerous. And also the fact that the Joker, like, may know Batman's true identity but do nothing about it, whereas, you know, Bane's whole thing is that he wants to destroy the Batman, not like Joker, where Joker's whole thing is this unbridled chaos, this wanting to have fun. I mean, like, so we'll go round again as well. So, Ray, like, I mean, what did you think to the Mad Hatter portion? Like, what was your take on all of this? Like, where are you at with that?
Yeah, it's interesting hearing you guys talk about, like, the whole Silver Age like connections and stuff, because I don't really have a framework for that. But my initial thing was I was a little bit frustrated because I went back and read the previous issue where it ends on the, you know, the iconic image of Batman screaming up to the sky in frustration, and I was hoping that it would dive directly into like more of that same focus, and it immediately felt like it was gonna be a bit more procedural and like go into, you know, comic relief character of the week kind of thing. And I was relieved actually in the end to find that it does tie back into Bane the way that Marv was saying. Like overall, I really enjoyed this issue. I just think the first couple of pages sort of started me off on a worrying note, but then when it gets to the bits where like Film Freak is being attacked in the alleyway, and like you get these really cool panels of action where like Bane is throwing a bin at him and then smashes into the bin. Like there's some really kinetic stuff going on in this, and I think it sets it off in a good way. Like I've tried to note down my favorite panels in each issue, and in this one, it's when he's holding Film Freak in his hands, and then it's just like headbutts him, and it says crunch.
It's such a kinetic headbutt. You
right?
feel that headbutt.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And I was like, this isn't going to go back into fluff mode. This is really good. This is what I wanted.
But it's the juxtaposition between the hyper-violence of Bane taking out Film Freak and the Mad Hatter
having a tea party.
Yeah, in all his, you know, like goofy Silver Age villain glory, with like his like pet chimp. Like one of his first actions is to break out his pet chimp and then rob a haberdashery. There's something,
and then like. The very final image of this issue where it's like there's so many really good like portraits of Batman just looking disheveled and upset and like tired and fed up and whatever. Yeah. And the very final one is him like staring up into the sky, like defeated or like knowing that he's got worse to come, and it's just a monkey throwing a cup in the air in the background. Like it sets such a weird tone, and like at first I was a little bit like,
worried.
A little bit worried, but I think. Yeah, Greg, to what you're saying, like that disquieting sort of juxtaposition, it does feed in. Yeah, it ultimately does feed in really well.
This ain't what you know anymore, kind of thing. Like you're through the looking glass, for want of a better way of describing it.
I'm not usually one to like jump in, and also not the one usually to bring up art. But one of the things that I like about this issue as well, being like the first issue that isn't the Batman screaming into the sky, is that it's Norm Brayfogle, and throughout Knightfall, he's my favourite artist. I know we've talked about this offcast, Greg, about our favourite Knightfall artists, but like I love the way he draws the characters. I love the expression, how expressive they are. Especially there's panels where like throughout this where like Batman and Robin are talking in the Batmobile, and Batman's giving Robin the side eye, and it's just like a perfect cartoon arched eye. Like there's so much sass in that look and everything. But also there's the way that the paneling is done as well. Like Rahul was saying, there's the moment that you cut back to Bane. While the Hat is preparing the tea party, and Bane's watching the TV, And there's just literally 4 panels. It's 2 TV panels, a small panel of Bane's eyes watching the TV, and then a panel from the side of the room with him with his legs crossed and the remote on his nose. And it's so well paneled. Like, to me, it feels like a film storyboard. Like, your eyes follow. You can follow the camera dolly through the room if you were watching a movie from those 4 panels. It's just done so well, and it reminds me a lot as well of the cuts to TV news that you get in The Dark Knight Returns. Yeah. And I think that the character of this psychologist that you get throughout the book is almost like an allusion. Well, not almost like, it's a very definite allusion to that.
Well, that's what that is. It's totally a nod to Dark Knight. Like with all the TV stuff and the this pop psychologist being like, I'm sane and so are you, with his book, you know.
Simpson Flanders.
Yeah. What a name. But yeah, that's the whole point, isn't it? Like, and I'm pretty sure that name isn't just picked out of thin air. So, Leon, where are you at with the Hatter stuff? Let's get your opinion on this as well.
Yeah, I won't dilly-dally too long because there's a lot more of the book to discuss. But I echo a lot of what you guys have said. I found that it's a good setup for this final run, and alluding to what comes later, how, in comparison to the last books we were reading, those felt like a bit more all over the place to give us a spread of Gotham and how the different functions and elements of the city and their infrastructure will react, and how an outsider like Bane coming in can sit behind the sidelines and like tilt things off balance. And with this series of issues, what's good about it is that they all are part of a greater whole and they feel more connected. And as you go through, as you say, and as the book says, the gauntlet, there is a hyper focus on just how badly worn down Batman is getting. And the way how it follows those feels so rooted in character and situation, more so than the prelude stuff that we read before. So yeah, I agree. It's a great setup. I agree on the art paneling in this being really good and really focused, really intentional in what it's doing. It isn't just framing awesome looking characters ready to like beat down each other, but what it's doing is really getting us into the head of some of these characters, particularly Batman and Bane, but also showing us how tenuous everything is and how unstable things have become, ready for Bane to swoop in and sort of claim his place on the throne. I do particularly love the TV stuff, as you guys have said, because, yeah, one, you have the allusion to Dark Knight Returns, but I also love it because it has this almost cool way. I mean, in a way, it's almost on the nose and didactic, but in other ways, it's not, because it gives us more of a flavor of the heartbeat of the city, I would say, because generally in these type of stories, we spend a lot of time with the Batman and his cohorts and then the villains, but we don't really get much time with regular Gotham people. So I do like how that can be a standing and give us a sort of temperature of how everyone's feeling. And it's funny to read, especially like when this book is written and sort of the attitudes, but like this Simpson Flanders guy who's always like pimping his book, he seems to be like all about that mental health, but he reads like some hippie not taking dangerous criminals seriously. It's almost like the sort of stereotypical from then, like liberals not being tough on crime and worrying about the feelings of mass murderers. So there's a lot of interesting stuff going on that feels rooted in its era of publication and gives us a bit of a view into sort of the general attitudes at the time, but also like diegetically in the world of Gotham, it makes so much sense and it creates a good like dichotomy between everybody else's relationship with Batman, not just his with Bane, etc. So yeah, I think it's a great jumping on point from the awesome setup of having everyone break out of Arkham.
And like we know, I mean, like, because I just wanted to jump on what Marvel was saying about Norm Brayfogle, and like Norm Brayfogle's work in this throughout this whole thing is absolutely gorgeous, and there's not a lot to choose between him and Aparo, I must say, but I'm a Jim Aparo guy, and we'll find out why when we get further into this and later on. But like the other thing, actually, to jump off one of the points that Leon made about ordinary people of Gotham and how like when I'm reading these stories here, when I'm reading this Knightfall book, I'm reminded of just how small a part of Gotham Batman actually is, and like the role of the GCPD is so huge in this. Like we see a lot of Bullock, we see a lot of Montoya, we see a lot of Commissioner Gordon, like more so than I've seen in a lot of other Batman stories. It's like the role, it's like Batman is you are reminded of how small Batman actually is, and how Batman is just one man. And
I'm surprised how much of the mayor you see in this as well. Like, you don't often see the mayor of Gotham in stories.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? But it all serves to kind of like highlight a greater, the fact that Batman is just one man and he's not infallible, which is a main thing that needs to be. I think that's a story beat that they needed to get across and to drill into people's minds in order for the next few parts of this to be anywhere near believable. Because I mean, a lot of people Batman's just one man. He's not a god, but people lift him to that level. He is lifted to that level with his participation in the Justice League and, rubbing shoulders with people like Wonder Woman and Superman, like rubbing shoulders with Diana and Clark, and being raised to that level, being present in the Hall of Justice and being a member of the Justice League. He's not like these others. He doesn't have superpowers and things, but you kind of forget that when you see him standing shoulder to shoulder with the others. And then in these books, it's made painfully clear. And, so, I mean, if we move on now to the next section. So we've had the Arkham breakout. We've dealt with the Hatter. Where's Batman's next stop? Batman's next stop was Amygdala and, the, ventriloquist, who is probably one of my favorite Batman rogues, actually, the ventriloquist, and the way they deal with him in these books is absolutely fantastic. Like, I love this whole thing where it's not just Scarface. He can, anything that can be a puppet can be one of his personalities made manifest, and like him listening to the puppet and things like that, I think it's just brilliant. And like this whole thing with him in this toy shop with Amygdala, who is basically this giant baby who's had his brain experimented on, who's, he has real anger management issues. And, so where are we at with this one? So this one was called Puppets. The previous one was called, Crossed Eyes and Dotty T's. So Puppets. So yeah, this is ventriloquist striking up a friendship with Amygdala in hopes of finding Scarface. So this is like part of this is something that goes on in the background of a lot of it, actually. The ventriloquist's quest to find Scarface again. So yeah, and he has a sock. He like literal sock puppet, and the sock is calling the shots. It's hilarious. So yeah, we also get to Batman actually goes to the scene where Film Freak was murdered, and like obviously he gets to see the carnage, and like I said, this is like the signpost telling him to turn back and everything. So Marv, where are you at with this stuff with the ventriloquist?
This one is it doesn't loom as large in my mind. Like thinking back on my history with Knightfall and rereading it this time, this one story-wise doesn't seem as important. But again, every single section feeds into the Gauntlet, and it still it really touches a nerve with like you said, with him finding Film Freak and like, you know, Robin standing in the background while he's describing that every bone in his body was broken, and like Robin's just so shaken by it.
Yeah.
And to go back to the artwork as well, the panel of them swooping down on the scene of the crime and their capes sort of merging together into this one sort of framing a series of spikes is really, really good, really, really nice.
Yeah.
But like when you get to the toy shop and ventriloquist and amygdala, like the whole point of it is again just accentuating how hurt Batman is, because like normally someone as huge and lumbering as amygdala would never be able to sneak up on Batman, but like he's just there behind him before Batman knows what the hell's happening.
Yeah.
And you get like again, no secret, Tim Drake, my favorite Batman. You've got Norm Brayfogle, my favorite artist in this. So in the moments where he's going to confront Bird, and you've got those just wonderful panels of Robin sort of channeling his inner Batman and having his face all in shadow with just like the white eyes and the grin, the manic grin. I love that stuff.
Yeah.
Even though he does end up sort of getting his ass handed to him, I love that fight just because you get to see him sort of almost practicing to be out on his own and trying to intimidate his enemies and stuff.
Yeah.
Some good stuff in this.
Leon, you want to jump in?
No, I was just seconding that really. The Robin stuff in this is really cool.
Yeah.
And I think this one's really good early on for just showing Batman taking an utter beating. And I love how you have a mirroring between Robin getting beaten up, Batman getting beaten up. It like reminds me of the previous issue where you had us mirroring Batman and Bane in their respective battles, showing how similar they are, but with their fundamental differences on display, because Batman like beats down, but like Bane kills and breaks every bone in the body. So it's a good setup. And here is really showing a kind of fracture in the Bat family, which because Batman's really on a like stay outside, like I'll do this alone, and Robin is really noticing just how like Batman's head and body are just not in it, but there's nothing really he can say to make Batman listen.
Yeah, and it's this whole how angry Bird gets when Robin captures Bird's bird. It's like, got him in the cave, he's like, don't hurt him. Like,
you'd better not have harmed a feather on his head.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. It's great though. Like I love what this issue highlights in the fact that if Batman is struggling to deal with these guys, like how is he ever going to be able to take down some of the more prominent members of the Arkham club? You know, it's like this is already like it's laboring, it's painful, it's intense. I don't know if anybody else did, but I was tempted to count the amount of times throughout these comics that Batman mentions he's got a broken rib.
Yeah.
Or he hears a rib pop or a wet pop. It must be a rib. You know, it's like, has he got any ribs left? Like, is his chest cavity just like bone meal? Like, it's insane.
He's held upright by the suit. He's like tapped in there like a corset, and if you loosen it, he'll just fall apart.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. When he goes back to the cave, Alfred is just putting like bamboo sticks against him and like cable ties holding him together, cable ties and bamboo. What do you make of this one, Ray?
So obviously I'm the newcomer to this story, and I guess I did know generally how revered this book is, but I didn't really fully know the legacy. So this is the issue that confirmed to me that it's not just soap opera storytelling, and like there's a genuine craft to it. And I suppose that sounds quite dismissive, but it comes from a place of ignorance on my part. So putting my hands up there, but like the scenes where we have the lieutenant and like he's covered in these moody pink and blue hues, that really cool tone that they have, and like the dynamism of Batman and Robin talking in the Batmobile, like back and forth discussing stuff as they're on their way to tackle the next big problem. That stuff comes off really well, and like gives a really good sense of pace, and like how they just don't have time to breathe, and they just have to keep going and fixing, from problem A to problem B to problem C. And then I liked that this one took the time to show that Bane's crew weren't just taking the stories of Batman's like mythos for granted. Like they were taking their time to, as we've already seen in the previous ones, but they were stopping to like properly assess how he how he tackles problems, how defeated he is, and like waiting for genuinely waiting for the moment that he's torn down enough that they can attack him. And it's clearly not now because it's the beginning of the book. And then also just mirroring this to the end where like Amygdala picks him up, and like there's only one iconic image I really know from this entire series, and it's Bane breaking Batman's back. And it's to see this early on another hulking villain like even get to the point of being able to pick Batman up. It's like, oh god, there's something really wrong with him at this moment, Yeah. And like I think it sells it this early on that he's that tired. I think cool
my favorite page in this one is this like full page splash here of Batman and the chaos in the toy shop with Amygdala's head coming flying through an advert for brandy dolls.
And again, it's still taking the time to have some moments of comic relief, which I think like taper off towards the end, but like it still finds the time to scatter a few bits of it in to just like lighten the tone and make you think everything's going to be okay. But we know where it ends up.
Just the sheer slapstick of that page, and like Norm Brayfogel's work here on creating this full page splash of action with no borders, where it just seamlessly blends like one point into the next. And it's just absolutely amazing. Like I love that page so much.
I think my favorite page is a few after that, where it's like a split diagonal of Robin being clocked in the face by Bird and like Batman being thrown to the ground by Amygdala. Like just the color differences between those. It's super cool.
That is a great page as well.
And Robin's note to Batman went bird watching.
You see the page after that one that you mentioned, Rahul, though. One thing, obviously, reading this younger, you don't pick up on all of sort of the artistry, but just the borders that are used on the panels in that to show sort of the pain and the impact. So, like where Amygdala starts getting his headache, it's like really thick black sort of scratchy lines, and then when Batman clocks him in the back of the head, it's a sharp pain. It's a one hit impact rather than the headache. Yeah. So it's just storytelling through the paneling. Brilliant stuff.
And the bit with basically they're fighting on top of the railway set, like kaiju.
Yeah.
Which I think is awesome framing. But and if you're gonna have a fight in a toy shop, have fun with it. Like that must have been such a fun scene to write and draw. Like I can only imagine. So I mean, like one thing that I did want to bring up is like the interiors of these books are so great, but the covers.
Stuff of legend.
Well, yes and no. Because I can't say I'm a huge fan of a lot of the cover work here in this series. And it's because I just have like a real love-hate relationship with Kelly Jones. Like I mean like I love his art in black and white. I was saying this to you guys earlier when we were discussing this, like getting ready for the show. I was saying to you guys that although I really love his work, and I love watching it in black and white and looking at it in black and white, when it gets coloured, there's just something that it just makes it just I don't like it. It just doesn't look right to me, and it just doesn't. It feels like, I know a lot of people are probably going to lampoon me for this, but it just feels like completely like there's something missing from it. When once it's coloured, it just loses something, and it feels like almost as if there's borders for things where there shouldn't be borders, or where there wasn't originally borders, and it's like nothing is like the edges of gloves, for example. Like if we look at the famous cover with Bane, with Batman kind of like bent over his knee, like you look at Bane's fingerless gloves, and you just look at where his gloves end on his hands and things like that, and it just there's just so many bits in it where I look at it, and I know that it's exaggerated and it's hyper, and it's extreme. It's the extreme comics coming through with these kind of like hyper muscular dudes and whatever. Like this thing in the 90s where things began to get more extreme and things like that. It's just, I don't know. I mean, like, what about you, Ray? I mean, what do you think of the covers on this? Like, throughout this, actually, we're just discussing the covers now, just throughout. Like, what do you make of that?
I mean, I'll be honest, I wasn't paying super attention to it, but like generally I wasn't that impressed with them, if I'm being honest. That specific one you're talking about just now, like looking at the like the gloves blending into the arms, I never really picked up on that. I thought the silhouette of that cover is pretty great, actually. But there's some further on, like the issue that we were just talking about, where we were going to get into the issue where it's Zaz taking over the like the women's institution or whatever it was.
Yeah, the school.
Yeah, like that cover doesn't really stand out to me. Like none of them have really stuck in my head, apart from the Batman bent over the knee one.
Yeah, Batman bent over Bane's knee.
Sorry, yeah.
I'm willing to. I think the Zas cover is the best, one of the better ones. But I mean, like Marv's going to disagree now. Marv's going to say he loves the Kelly Jones covers.
Yeah, Marv, put your defense on.
Yeah, go on, Marv.
I mean, they are great covers. I'm not going to sort of capitulate and sort of play the you got a good point there. You do have a good point. I will say the color bleed of the fingerless glove on that Bane cover, I'd never noticed it until you mentioned it just now, and I've been reading this comic like over and over again for the past like 28 years. I've never noticed that before in my life.
I've ruined it for you.
But like the framing, like you said, probably does work better, as you've shown on some of the stills that you showed. Works better in black and white. Yes. Meant to be black and white, but when they're coloured, I don't think they're over-coloured. I don't think they're coloured garishly. I don't think they're miscoloured. I think think much like oh god, what is it? The Mist, where you've got a movie that is released in colour and then it's released in black and white, and the director says this is the way it was meant to be viewed. Both versions work. They work in completely different ways. Yes. Much like Logan, with the noir version of Logan. Completely different movie when you watch it the second time with the different colour grading. But I don't think the colouring, much as it can do with other things that are coloured after an artist who works primarily in black and white works on it, it's not ruined by the colour. I don't think it's overworked.
Yeah, I wasn't saying it would be overcoloured or garishly cut or whatever. I just feel like it loses something. I'm not saying it's completely ruined. I just think the colouring has kind of like taken something out of it, as in I don't know, like I start to see points that basically I start to see a lot of things that I don't necessarily like about 90s comics art. I don't know what it is, but that's just me. And like Leon, opinions on covers if you have any?
I don't really feel as strongly about it, but there is a thing with the era these books came out of where you would get a mixed bag like this. And I think that some of these covers in their like framing and everything are cool, and some don't really leave an impact on me.
Yeah.
And yeah, so not to be on the fence or anything, but I just don't really have any strong feeling on them. I do feel some of them are like awkward, but then that's just what I remember from what comics were like back then.
Yeah.
But then I think some of them are cool and like they're relating to something iconic and like distilling it. And I think in that way they do work. But I was never really a fan of a lot of the color and work of this era too with covers. So I guess maybe I don't know. Maybe I'm more towards your side, Greg, but I don't really have any strong feelings because I think some of these are cool, like the rats on Batman's face for a later issue. That one's cool.
Oh, yeah.
That one's cool.
That's one of my favorites. Yeah.
And the Zas one's cool. I like the Zas one. But there's just a few of them that I can't. I
like the Poison Ivy one as well.
Yeah. There's just some that I just can't. I can't say I like, and it's my love-hate relationship with Kelly Jones. His art, like some of it's absolutely fantastic, like gorgeous, really great in black and white. But then some of it I don't know. It's hit and miss, man. Like I couldn't decide earlier whether I really like it or not. But yeah, I mean, I think this is just my opinion. Like I've always felt that with the strength of the artwork inside with Norm Brayfogle and Jim Aparo, and then like I always felt like it's probably just a stylistic thing because I know he has that Kelly Jones has a very distinct style and he does this exaggeration, this almost caricaturization and like cartooning with characters, and you can see that in like the muscle structure that he puts on and on characters and things like that, and the way that he exaggerates certain features of Batman, like drawing the ears on the cowl longer and all that kind of stuff. But like I think that's just me edging more towards enjoying the realism of Norm Brayfogle and Jim Aparo because they keep it a little less exaggerated. And I think in at this point in time, exaggeration was something that I like especially with the way exaggeration of art was going in the 90s, with the way that the cartooning was going when they were doing this exaggeration, this over musculature and everything else. I think that's just a stylistic thing for me. Like my opinion is that stylistically I prefer the other stuff, but I think that's just me. I think that's my opinion and should take it with a grain of salt, but there we go.
Well, being like both of the artists that you mentioned are like our joint top two with the Jim Aparo and Norm Brayfogle. I would agree completely. Yeah. I think that style, and correct me if I'm wrong, but Kelly Jones did work on what I'm thinking of, but like that style works better with like the more gothic stories like Batman Vampire and stuff like that. Yeah. So it has its place and it works in its place.
That's what I mean. Kelly Jones was Batman Vampire, and Batman Vampire is stunning. But then like I don't feel that Kelly Jones. Maybe I just don't feel the covers fit the books. I don't know. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe that's my issue. But anyway, speaking of issues, we're moving on now to Batman Volume 1, number 493, which break out your Casios and your 80s synth slasher soundtracks for Red Slash. So this is Batman very aware that he's in trouble. And he knows at this point that Bane has done this on purpose to try and mess him up, so that he will be in a weakened, tenderized state, ready for 4 seconds on each side in a pan. And Victor Zsasz turns up at a boarding school for girls. And Victor Zsasz is doing as Victor Zsasz is wont to do, which is killing people and then scarring himself to commemorate the occasion. And it really is framed, and like the way that this plays out and the whole framing of this book, the whole framing of this section, the even the coloring with these kind of like the whole thing is it's a slasher movie. And like you've got these angles in certain panels where it's complete vertigo, and it's just like the whole thing is built as kind of like a neon pinks and blues, and the whole thing's just built from the ground up as this kind of like homage to like 80s thrillers, I guess. With the way that the whole thing is constructed on a script level, and the way it plays out, and what you know, what Zas does and how Zas is like creeping around the hallways of this school, and he's got his victims all kind of holed up in one room, like petrified. And then he's just kind of like creeping round the school and picking off the cops that dare venture in. And all the while, Bane's like sitting and watching the whole thing. And, you know, everyone's like saying to Bane that Batman's ready. And Bane's like, no, he's not quite ready yet, as if they're looking at a pie in the oven. You know,
not brown enough on the top.
Yeah,
Come
exactly.
back in 10 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Give it another 5. But it's just like, the whole thing's perfect. And there's some really gorgeous pages in here. So, I mean, like, Marv, like, your opinion on this one, Zas.
One of my favorite parts of the book. Not my favorite, but like top 5 issues. I like you were saying, like the coloring, the artwork, the framing, the mood, the slasher movie mood of it is brilliant. One thing I love is this is, I think, the start of the constant of Batman's internal monologue telling you that he's like heading for trouble, as you said. Like, some of the lines in this, it opens up with racing for my grave, already dead. Like, that's a way to open a comic.
Yeah.
And then on the next page, like, it's an unfortunate panel because I really don't like it. The him seeing Bane's face in the rain of the windshield. But in that panel, he tells you that basically that he knows exactly what Bane's plan is. He knows that he's running the gauntlet, but he also knows that he can't let himself stop running it. He has to do this because no one else is going to do it for him. But I think the thing that struck me most rereading this is coming to it with the knowledge of other media that I've consumed in the past like decade. So like the whole situation with like Zas and the girls, the cops trying to make their way through and getting picked off reminded me so much of the Zas section in Batman Arkham Asylum, the video game. Like, obviously this is framed, the game must be framed so much on this, and obviously probably other Zas stories that I haven't read. But like I had that weighing so much on my mind when I was rereading this, and like for myself, and I don't know how much it was for you, Rahul, the moment when the second cop goes in and finds Axton's body, and he's coming up to him from behind, lifts his head, and he's got like a huge gash on his neck. All I could think of was the Resident Evil 2 remake when he found the cop in the liquor corridor.
Yeah, not my usual go-to touchstone, but yeah, I see it.
Yeah. Totally.
The strongest girl, the girl that's like trying to lead the sort of I was going to say revolution. That's not the right word. Trying to fight back against Zaz. She reminds me so much of like the way an X-Men character's face would be proportioned. She looks like Psylocke. She looks like 90s X-Men character, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
Totally.
So those are the main things that stuck in my head. And obviously, sorry, I should mention at the end when Batman is sort of facing against Zaz, and Zaz is doing like the sort of the mentalist thing of like getting in his head and like, you're just like me. We're not so different, you and I. But like, he gets in Batman's head. He gets in the greatest detective's head. So much so that Batman nearly beats him to goddamn death.
Yeah.
I think it's a couple of pages before when Bane's like, his body is broken, but his mind is still strong. I need to wait until his mind is weakening. And literally at the end of this issue, you see that Batman's mind is not where it's supposed to be. Batman doesn't go this far, as much as Zack Snyder would, disagree.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a shocking moment to see Batman go that far. Or to even entertain the idea of going that far. Like, that's how you know he's at the edge of his abilities, because he's even like, he's even entertaining it. It's, it's mad, isn't it? It's great. and like, this is the point we're making. So it's like, we're actually seeing all these people, all these rogues that would have been dealt with so deftly at one point by Batman. Like, he would have had the Hatter wrapped up in seconds. He would have had, he knows the modus operandi of these people. He would have had them dealt with and done and locked back away. But what we're seeing now is we're seeing him struggle with villains that he's already faced, that he's got a track record against. that we know that Batman can take these guys down, and like it's just a great way of showing it. And I again, like the framing of this is just absolutely, it's one of my favorite things. So Leon, any opinions on Zaz?
Yeah, I've got to say, one of my favorite onomatopoeia noises is Shrek.
yeah, for sure.
Beyond that, I do like how, especially for the time, this slasher thing does have a bit of an extra wrinkle with it, where the women are just not victims, and instead it's a range of different women with different opinions.
Yeah.
And one of them is very much like, we can't take this line down. We have to fight. We're not all probably going to make it, but we have to fight. We can't just wait until the cops get here.
Yeah.
And I did appreciate that, and I'd forgotten about that particular element. But otherwise, there's a lot of cool purples in this, which I always appreciate. And it's really, it's like cool because it's outside in the rain, and it's all the cops trying to like negotiate and not storm the place because they don't want to risk the hostages. But I love how it gives this sort of futuristic noir vibe, having it be purples. There's a great feel to it.
Yeah, it almost feels a bit like Judge Dredd. That's what I kept feeling.
I love the fight in the darkness, the paneling and the way that fight plays out. This is the bit where you were talking about, Marv, where Batman goes too far, and we get these lovely wet crunch, thack, dock, clunch, where he's like beating Zsasz half to death. But it's just like this beautiful fight with these kind of like pyramid and trapezium and triangle, fast moving panels, like the speed that indicates, and the fact that we're in the dark and Zsasz is like attacking him from like all different angles. Like I can imagine how this would play out in a movie. And it's just fantastic. And the colouring as well, that it's all in these kind of like these blues, these cold blues, because we've got like a cold killer and then these red words, these red impact words. These onomatopoeia and lettering, like Brach, where Zsasz hits a chalkboard, I think it is, and like, oh yeah. I think Cunch is like my favourite, or is it Clinch? I think it's Cunch.
Cunch, it's Cunch.
Yeah, the wet Cunch. Like when he's punching him in the head, and like, yeah.
That particular one, and especially because it's framed as like in blood, it always makes me think of it's a really deep cut, but like in like 16-bit like side scrollers like Streets of Rage and stuff, like the really heavy hit sounds that you get in that sort of game, it always makes me think of that.
And I see that panel, and do you know what I see with his green eyes? I see Spawn. Do you see it?
I can see it now. I can't unsee it now.
So I mean, moving on from there, we've got so the next issue is we're back to Detective Comics. We've got a break from the Kelly Jones covers, with a more sort of like a more stylized, more cartoony cover here. This one is Sam Keith, and this is like, for me, has echoes of like Kevin Eastman type stuff. And it's not my favorite cover. And it's basically Bane versus Croc round 2, and Robin kind of caught in the middle of it, because Robin is tailing Bird still after the end of the previous time that Robin and Bird face off. Robin is tailing Bird still, and Robin tails Bird all the way back to Bane, and you have that whole point on the that's great, that is, by the way, those panels where they're on the train, on top of the train, and then Bane comes up behind Robin and grabs him, and then that's that, and then like they end up in the sewer, and I think Bane is he I can't remember what he's attempting to do with Robin. Like I couldn't. Is he attempting to use him as bait, or
he's deciding what to do with him? Like at first, he's basically I'm going to use you for information. You intrigue me, boy. Like, why would Batman have a child as his sidekick? Tell me more about him. Tell me more about his weaknesses. Give me information that's useful for me. I could break you at any moment. And because he's being so defiant, he's just getting more and more sort of frustrated with him.
And then he decides he's probably just going to kill him just to fuck with Batman, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then at this point, we've got like Bane versus Croc Part 2 with this really visceral fight with Bane like breaking Croc's arms again while they're still in casts. It's horrible. and like we get like a sort of a glimpse, a first kind of glimpse at Bane's weakness here as well, because Croc manages to nail Bane's venom supply. And realizes what it is that's, you know, keeping Bane going, like kind of takes him off the juice a little bit, and that kind of helps. And it's a great issue again for kind of like showcasing the brutality and the savagery of Bane. Just watching him take down Killer Croc, who pre-Bane was probably one of Batman's most physically imposing opponents. I guess. And I mean, like, Killer Croc had a stint as a crime boss as well, so criminal mastermind and physically imposing in a way. So it's kind of like Bane. Again, then they're using Killer Croc to show Bane's power and brutality, and also crocodile wrestling, alligator wrestling. So there we go. And it's a near-death experience for Robin. So just briefly with this one, where are we sitting at with this one? Marv first, sorry.
I mean, I'll be super quick with this one.
Yeah.
Norm Brayfogle, Robin-centric. I love that. There's not much more to say that you haven't said. Bane versus Croc 2 is great. Like you said, the fact that even though he's psychologically completely broken from the last battle, he has enough cunning to remember that Bane bulked up from the venom the last time they fought, so he takes that out first. Yeah. I like that. And Norm Brayfogle can't half do a grimace. Like the faces that Robin's pulling when he's trying to rip through his bonds, that's amazing.
Awesome. Yeah,
that's basically all I have to say about this.
Yeah, and it's also, again, it's like a shadow and a prelude of things to come, because what Bane has done to Killer Croc from the previous time he fought Croc, and from fighting Croc again now, is like he's broken him physically and psychologically. And this is like all things that are going to happen to Batman. It's like we're looking at all the things that are going to happen to Batman, and we're looking at them happen to different characters across different books, like with Film Freak, for example, and now this with Croc. Again, Ray, what about you? What's your opinion here?
Yeah, my big takeaway from this is, like, I love the opening where it shows like Bane walking through the empty streets and sort of reveling at his effect on Gotham. I thought that's really cool. And then also just the moment where like Robin's got like a mask on his face, being covered up while Bane and Croc are fighting, and then like he gets his hood torn off at some point, and it's just Croc staring him in the face, and it's like a proper horror movie reveal where you get like a good close up of like all Croc's dripping teeth and red eyes and stuff. I thought that's a really cool moment.
And Leon, finally.
Yeah, once again, I'll just echo all of what you guys have said. I quite like the color palette of this in the sewer. How you got a lot of different types of blues, and I think it works well against, like, in the background of the characters, and obviously it's like a sewer filled with water, so you get like a lot of good sort of extra widescreen panels where we see a bit more of the makeup of the sewer, and it gives us like a bird's eye view, not really a bird's eye view, but like a good vantage point of what's all around these people and what's at stake, especially after Robin wakes up and he's blindfolded. You can feel the danger with them standing on that thin bricked passage that just looks like it's made to break. So it's really cool, and I think the build up with Croc coming out and then starting the fight with Bane, and the page that Marv mentioned where it's just panels getting closer and closer to Robin's face, and he's digging deep to push him. Like, he starts it off with his hands being numb and saying, I can't do it. But he's like, you have to. And you can see him sort of taking a leaf out of Batman's book and finding that extra pool of sheer will and determination to get yourself out of a sticky situation. It's the classic comic book thing when it comes to these heroes, and we have like iconic panels with people like Spider-Man doing the same. And I just love whenever that happens. That's a very like comic 101 thing that I just love to see again and again.
Yeah, great stuff. That. So the next book is Night Terrors, which is the one with this is kind of like the beginnings of the Joker Scarecrow portion of all of this, which is like basically the thing that takes us through the end goal. And we've got here so this is like Robin's escape from the fight where Croc and Bane are still fighting. Robin is like zipping through the sewers underwater, trying not to drown, trying to keep himself from being sucked into Gotham Harbor. And he's like he uses the bat rope, and he uses his tries to use his staff as well. And also this is like we get Cornelius Stirk pop up, who he likes to make his victims feel fear, and then he eats their hearts for the norepinephrine, which is what powers his ability to make himself appear as other people. His kind of like, I guess it's like a psychic ability. And Cornelius Stirk, the Joker turns up at Cornelius Stirk's door and decides he's going to work with Stirk. Stirk's too unpredictable though, and Stirk has a one-track mind and decides he's going to go after he's going to go after Commissioner Gordon, which the Joker doesn't like, and he decides to just leave Stirk to it and let Stirk get caught by Batman, because by this point Batman's already on his case. He's seen the victim in the dumpster and everything else. Yeah, we've also got like the ongoing little bits of Batman's therapy here with Chandra solving and things like that. And yeah, so I mean, like the basically Batman is reminded of Stirk having dealt with Zsasz. So what he does is he's like, I wonder if Stirk, where's Stirk kind of thing. And he goes like, he's like, let's look for anomalous sightings of historical figures, I guess. And he's like, you got all these like weird sightings of like all these historical figures across Gotham. And he's like, yeah, that's Stirk. And that's how we know he's going after him. And long story short, it ends with, I think, does this one now end with, this is where the Joker decides he's going to sort of like buddy up with the Scarecrow, isn't it? By the end of this one. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's when they decide they're going to do their little bit and go after the mayor. But obviously they're like dogs chasing cars. Like they don't know what to do with it when they've got it. They've got all this power and they're not really like, they don't really know what to do with it. And this is the difference between those two and Bane, which is what I was getting at the beginning. So what I'll do is I don't think that one is totally significant, other than the fact that we now have this partnership going on between the Joker and the Scarecrow, and we've got everything that's coming next, because that's setting us up for kind of like the big drop. Which is coming up now. So, and then we move into this portion with the Firefly, which I rather like this, because these ones here showcase Batman's exhaustion even more in him dealing with the Firefly and dealing with these fires across Gotham, and having to like deal with, like it obviously being prepared to deal with the fire, but at the same time, like the toll it takes on his body. Like, yes, he can wrap himself in like triple layers suits that are flame retardant, but it's not, it still takes a toll, and he's not resting properly in between these forays into the darkness that is Gotham, and it's really beginning to take it out of him now, especially this heat that's put on by Firefly. And like, I just love the flames in this, like the colors and the way that, the fire, these panels that showcase the fire and the flames in these roaring infernos that are set by the Firefly. Like, I mean, like, what do you guys make of this Firefly section? So we'll just go villain by villain now. So what do you guys think into the Firefly stuff?
Well, like you said, like one of the few notes that I have for this section is that like Firefly is such an insignificant villain, but like this section lives rent free in my head when I think of Knightfall, just because of the artwork. Norm Brayfogle again, the GOAT, but like Adrian Roy. Like the coloring in this is doing work. Like you feel the heat of the flames just from the coloring, the shading, the positioning sometimes of the flames. Like it's such a it all comes together. But the coloring, I think, is doing the most work in this, and you really feel the heat of this in this and the other Firefly section.
I read this in print, and like. Normally there's like, I mean, like, because if you're reading like the newer digital version of this, normally like I find between print and digital, especially with these older comics, the colors are way more intense. And that's largely because of the, you know, like the print paper and everything else. And I think that's like a symptom of maybe they intensified the colors to deal with that. And also the fact that at the time when they were printing these, they wouldn't have had they wouldn't have been able to print in the palettes they can print in now. But in the way that the flames are drawn in this, and just the way that like these panels here with the fire and these beautiful colors, these hues where Batman is like, you know, hoisted over these infernos, and obviously the whole thing is lit by the fire, and like it's turning me into a pyromaniac. It's like, honestly, it's gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. Like, did you enjoy this section here, Ray?
Yeah, I actually really like this section because, like, you've already explained why the colors are so good, and like you said, on the digital editions, they really pop off the screen. It looks incredible. But it's also the issue where, like, it reminds you that Batman's really stubbornly refusing any help because he feels like he's the only one that knows them, and I like that it takes the time to reiterate that, but it also takes the time to show that he's taking as much of a break as he knows that he can afford. Like, you know, we see him like head back home and take a shower but refuse to go to sleep and all that kind of stuff. Like, I think those are really good moments to sell the intensity of it.
He faces off against the Cavalier, who totally shops at the same clothes places as Bird. And we've got more of that TV stuff with the book, the guy pushing his book again. And it's
hang on, but also the fact that he didn't stop Firefly, like he let him get away, and he has to like figure that out. Like, it's another problem because he couldn't solve it in the moment. Yeah, and like it's just another way of selling how, like, on any other day when he was fully rested, that would never have happened. You know?
Yeah. It's like the worst week ever for Batman, isn't it? And then like, so Leon, I mean, what do you make of the Firefly stuff?
Yeah, I like it. Not to repeat what you guys said, but yeah, the color palette's cool. I think that the frame composition there is really cool as we see sort of the theme park on fire. And I really like the Peter Parker energy Robin has with his panels here, where we see him at home, and then we see him like basically web slinging throughout the town, and he's doing detective work on his own, which is nice to see.
Yeah.
And this isn't an issue and where things are really coming together in the various different factions who are part of this. So I do like the build up that we get with this, and then leading to the showdown at the end, which is like well rendered with these like overlapping panels, which I always like. But yeah, ultimately I quite enjoyed his stuff.
Yeah, and then we have, is this the bit where you also get that little bit of Robin lying to his friends as well?
The lying's the part of this job, the only part of this job I hate.
Yeah, that's some Peter Parker stuff right there. And the duck with the ventriloquist, he's putting on a puppet show for this lawyer. With the duck and a cop, and then we've got like the Riddler, who it's basically showcasing as well all these changes going on in Gotham. Like the the old guard are almost getting phased out because the Riddler's trying to plan a crime and his dudes are getting increasingly impatient waiting for him to plan the crime. And they're all just like, you know, like, why have we got to send these riddles? Why can't we just go and rob the place? And I love this kind of like little insurrection of them turning on him and like basically at this point, like how second fiddle is the Riddler, you know, and he's supposedly one of the more dangerous ones. And like, it's almost like the Riddler's just out hunting for attention. And then in the next issue, this is where Ivy turns up. So we've got more Firefly, and more, and so now some Ivy. This one's a Jim Aparo one. And again, like Jim's paneling with the flames is like, yeah, like exactly as good. And the looks on, like some of the ways that Jim does, like the looks on people's faces in this book and the way that he gets the exhaustion across with Bruce Wayne. And there's just this one page that I absolutely adore, because I think I was talking to you guys about it, where he's looking himself in the mirror and he's having this conversation with himself about whether or not he's going to go to this party with Alfred in the room. And it's like, it's that conversation you have with yourself every day before work.
that page has one of my favorite lines in the entire book in it, where it's just Alfred leaving the room and he's just like, I shall awaken you as late as possible. Like, I think about that line so much whenever I'm like really tired. You know those times when you're like in your early 20s and like you've been invited out to this party, it's the third night in a row that you've been invited out and you're absolutely shattered. And you're like, I'll just take a nap and then I'll fucking go out to the club. All right, fine.
Yeah. And I whatever gets you through the day, sir.
Yeah.
In one mask or another, I have to be there. And he just face plants the bed. It's like the animation of him face planting the bed as well. Like Bruce Wayne face planting a bed. It's like a moody teenager. It's brilliant. And then we've got basically the turning up of Poison Ivy, and this is so we've now got the Scarecrow and the Joker are in the mayor's office making the mayor call people to give the cops the runaround all over the town, basically, to various points where there's various things rigged up to explode. It's a proper Joker scheme, with a little bit of Scarecrow thrown in, because obviously he's using the Scarecrow's fear toxin to kind of like coerce the mayor and to control the mayor and get him to doing what he wants to do. Again, these two are just, it's like the total energy of dogs chasing cars. Like, madness is as madness is wont to do, and especially with these two. It's that real unfocused, like, if you get the feeling that if these two had a little bit more focus, if the screws had been a little tighter, like they could have given Bane a run for his money in the whole kind of grand scheme of things. But they're not interested in Bane. They don't. You don't really understand what they're interested in. That's the point. I know that the Scarecrow just wants to continue his experiments and continue making fear serum, and perfecting his recipe. But like Joker's just interested in chaos, which is great, and it's just pure Joker energy. And you've got this brilliant panel of the Scarecrow eating crisps.
It's one of my favourites.
His mask pulled half up, which is kind of like a little bit of Rorschach having a tin of beans thing going on.
Yeah.
So like this whole bit with Ivy turning up at the party, and this is also the issue where Bane kind of like lets slip that he has deduced that Batman is Bruce Wayne. Which I love the idea of that. I love how he comes to that conclusion, that he's observed him enough to come up with that. And you feel like, well, it was such a simple thing. Like, how have none of Batman's enemies, how has nobody else ever observed him enough to come to that conclusion? Like, yeah. and again, this is like Aparo's work with faces and like the way he manages to get that kind of animation and that exhaustion in, and that level of expression into people's faces in this book is just incredible. And then, Ivy is doing the Ivy thing where she's controlling people using specific plants that she's placed on every table of the party. And, we've got this whole bit with again we're getting some more Jean-Paul Valley here. So what we're getting now is we're getting little hints, more hints of Jean-Paul Valley's like inability to control himself in the way that he's dealing with these hoods who have decided they're going to try and break into a warehouse. Because the whole city's a mess, and they're like, well, if we're going to do it, we're going to do it now. They're being like opportunistic about it, and he's a little bit brutal. And yeah, Batman versus Ivy's thugs. Some of the faces that Ivy pulls throughout this as well. Like,
yeah, I like that they're reintroducing like more big hitters, like big beefy guys. Like, we got Amygdala at the start and everything, and like leading up to Bane and just really testing whether he's going to be able to handle it. The only other note I have against this issue is, lol, a panther bites his helmet.
Yeah, because they have the fight in the is it this one where they have the fight? Yeah, they do. They have the fight in the zoo.
It's some sort of zoo. Yeah, and it's like, because the dialogue is always so self-serious, and that's a very, like, Batman inner monologue thing is always dramatic and self-serious, but, like, just the image of it really made me laugh, because couldn't take it seriously.
Oh, no, the zoo's the next one. The zoo's Burning Questions.
Oh, I see. Sorry, jumping ahead a bit.
Yeah, the zoo, but that's a great bit. Yeah, the zoo with the fight, and he has to take on the Panther. But yeah, the stuff with the zoo is where Batman finally catches up to the Firefly again. And obviously the firefighters are on strike because it's Gotham.
Well, also because of the madness that Joker and the Scarecrow are making the mayor do. They're making everyone, like, all of the different... I was going to say branches of government. All of the different civil servants just up in arms. They're all running around in circles while the city burns. Yeah. So,
and it's because of Joker and the Scarecrow kind of like messing with the mayor. And then, so all this TV stuff is about to come to a head, because the guy who's hawking his book, I'm Sane and So Are You, Flanders Simpson. Is it Simpson Flanders or Flanders Simpson? Which way round is that?
Simpson Flanders, I believe.
Yeah. Well, he's on Not Sally Jesse Raphael.
Yeah, that's what I
What is it? Something Rudolfo?
Cassie Josie Rodolfo. Yeah,
that's it. Yeah, Cassie. Yeah. But yeah, so he turns up on TV. The Riddler does, after being shunned by his own gang, to try and he's like, well, you know what? I'm going to do the riddles anyway, even if because they're going to rob the post office, but I'm going to do the riddles anyway. So he goes to the TV station. He decides to hold everyone hostage with a fake bomb. And you've got this whole. I love this bit for the fact that this is like this guy coming unstuck with the "I'm sane and so are you" thing. Like, in the face of one of these actual criminals, like in the face of the criminally insane, one of these people from Arkham, he actually kind of just crumbles a little bit and realizes that maybe he's wrong. and he can't help some people, I guess. And yeah, the Panther stuff with Batman's is like triple Nomex suit or whatever. Some great work here as well with Batman kind of like there's this bit where it's like Batman is jumping down or across, and you've got it spread over 3 panels, and you've got this large Batman figure just kind of across 3 panels. And then obviously he manages to catch and bring down the Firefly. Firefly suspended over this pit of alligators.
Is that when he's doing the Olympic dive?
Yeah. And you've got like thingy on top of basically Robin takes down the Riddler, but he does it in a really what is people think is a really careless way with the fast acting epoxy. Huntress makes an appearance briefly. she kind of like turns up for a couple of pages.
In 1993, I was with the hoods that she's fighting. I'm like, who the hell is this?
Yeah.
That's not Batgirl.
Yeah. No, it's Huntress. It's Huntress. More on Huntress next time, I think. But
good, because I still don't know who that is.
Yeah. She's one of the sort of like the other
extended
vigilantes that operate in Gotham. Yeah, she's
right.
Her whole family were killed by mafia or something like that, or she's she's part of a mafia family. She was kidnapped as a child and
raised by the mafia.
Well, no, she was kidnapped by a child and then like raped by a rival don or something really grimdark like that. I think is the origin story we're going with for this version of Huntress, which kind of like speaks to you about the state of grimdark comics in the late 80s, early 90s kind of stuff. Like when things we were coming out of, I guess, the dark age of comics, when they were doing stuff like that.
Just fridging people left, right, and center.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So Batman is like truly exhausted by this point. Like the fire has just completely taken it out of him, and we've got this page of him just like you can see the worry lines on his mask. He's completely just had it. He's like sitting there, just like, who will stand between Gotham and Bane? Who? And then we've got this wonderful cover of Batman sweating bullets, up on fear gas, punching Joker in the face with the ghost of Jason Todd in the background. And that's when
says it all, really.
Yeah, that's when we move on to one of my favourite issues, which is Die Laughing.
Definitely.
Now, the coolest thing about Die Laughing is Jim Aparo's work here with the apparitions of the fear gas and the way that they draw. I mean, like, first of all, I love Jim Aparo's design for the Scarecrow. But this is where I was going to come on to the Aparo versus Norm Brayfogle thing, because I don't think anybody else could have drawn this but Jim Aparo. And, like, there's a special kind of intensity that Aparo brings with his work, which is edges more on the side of realism, the anxiety and the fear and the panic that he manages to inject into each page with this. And, like, in the faces of some of the characters here. And you can see clearly that he is someone who has worked for EC Comics on horror titles. Like he did some work on horror titles and things like that. He worked for EC Comics at one point, and this is where it starts to shine through in the way that he does, like in the work that he does here. And his style is great for this Batman story because he manages to capture the twisted madness in each shadow perfectly without losing the Silver Age shine and going too far. It's like just enough darkness, but it's still a Kate book. And like, it's like escalation from also like this is the point now where we've gone full escalation from lowest to highest threat. So now we're up against the Joker and the Scarecrow, Batman's most dangerous foes until Bane walked on the scene. And yeah, this is all the stuff with the mayor coming to a head. So we've got explosions, we've got the explosion on the bridge, and like some awesome onomatopoeia work here with the shum, with a bunch of rocks falling. And I just think that looks beautiful with the green into the yellow, and I love the way that especially in these books, the onomatopoeia is like so on point in stylization and the way that the fonts are styled to fit the noise that's happening, and even colored appropriately. And it's just like you can hear Joker's shrieking laugh because it's in bright pink, and it's just everything about this issue is fantastic. This is the point now where it starts to get really, really, really intense.
And all those explosions are so impactful because of that.
Yeah.
100%.
You feel every single one.
Yeah, you do. And I don't think anybody but Aparo could have drawn this at all.
I think my favourite piece of onomatopoeia in this is when the Joker pushes the crisps into Scarecrow's face, and it's just blish.
Yeah.
You can hear the crisps breaking against his face in that onomatopoeia. It's brilliant.
Yeah. I mean, Ray, where are you at with this one? Because this is where it starts to get really intense, and this is the bit that I was probably most excited for you to read.
Yeah, I think this is where I started because previously I think I was not necessarily skimming the book, but I was like reading it relatively quickly because I knew there was a lot to get through. And this is the point where I started slowing down and realizing the action was ramping up. Speaking of onomatopoeia, I love how much Joker's just teasing the mayor, like, because he knows that anything that he describes will then be envisioned when he's under the venom. Under the Scarecrow's gas or whatever, fear toxin. Yeah. And like he's shaking like rattlers to make him think of snakes and like giving really vivid descriptions of snakes and stuff. I thought that's a very Joker cruel thing to do. And I love towards the end where it's like Batman gets infected by the fear toxin and all it does is spur him on, and like he's pummeling Joker while he's screaming Jason Todd's name aloud. And that's his external thing. He's just like, manifesting his violence. But inside, he's like waxing poetic about Jason Todd's death. And I just thought that whole sequence was super interesting and super like got me into his headspace.
Yeah. I mean, like up to this point now, through the whole thing, my opinion is you can totally see, like as we discussed in the last episode we did, that the original aim was to kill Bruce Wayne in this story and not merely to break him. Because like from the setup and from the rise and the fear toxin towards the end, conjuring images of Jason Todd, feeding his anger, showcasing all his failures, his greatest failure at this point as well, the death of Jason, and like his career up to this point being showcased in these, his entire rogues gallery start to finish. And like he's running on fumes, but the fear almost gives him a second wind because all it does is inspire his anger. Like you said, it just gives him a second wind. And there's just something about the way Aparo renders those fear toxin apparitions, like throughout this book actually, where that appears, and the design of the Scarecrow, and like this is his horror comic stuff bleeding through again. But it's just like you can tell, like in the way that they've weakened him and in what he's done up to this point so far and how he's fought and how things are going and the way Gotham's going, like the intention was to kill him. Like not completely, but like
take him out.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like it's insane. And I'm just so like, I almost feel like I wish they had killed him just to see what would have happened and how they would have dealt with it and brought him back. And it's this point of like the fact that, this is so like there's something so much more permanent and harrowing about the way they did it in this though, rather than killing him. There's just something so much more brutal, which we're going to come on to now because we're going to start discussing this next section. And like in contrast to the period of mourning and the grand funerals and the chance to say goodbye that we're given with Superman's death, almost a mythic end to a prominent member of a pantheon of gods. Batman isn't a god. Batman's a single mortal man, ascended to mythic status upon his deeds and the idea that he created. He's an urban legend, like I've already said. He's more feared than celebrated. His forging is more brutal and unforgiving. Like Metropolis and Gotham, for me, sit like Hades and Olympus. And this is no more evident than when we compare the death of Superman to the breaking of the Bat and to this lead up here. And we're seeing all of these torments and trials of Batman. And that, for me, just comes across like so perfectly, especially in these two issues here, like with 662, with like Detective Comics 663, which is the one with the cover with the rats on it, where Batman is being swept through the sewers, like trying, like his last act of, his last heroic act is to save the mayor of Gotham, and it took it all out of him. It completely finished him off. And like, I mean, where are you guys at with that now? Like, so we'll get Leon first this time, actually.
Yeah, I think this is instrumental in showing us the breaking of, say, his will through heroism, because Batman's so determined and almost like quickly self-sacrificial, ready to run in the burning buildings and stuff, knowing that he's not at 100%. And I think the harrowing bit with the mayor and trying to get the mayor out and using all of his strength to open the hatch to get them out of there. Like, you just, because at that point he's underwater, so he can't talk really. So it's all in a monologue, and he's just seething at Bane the whole time, and that is almost like the sole thing, the sole line of determined action really that gets him out for it, because No Rest for the Wicked is an issue mostly spent with Batman now reflecting on all of these things that have broken him down and weakened him in these previous issues, and things are really coming to a head. And I think that these set of pages they're really, I think that they make everything feel organic in the run up to this end. And I know it's only like half of that issue, but it is really striking, that part, because especially like following on from the previous issue where you got just explosions everywhere, and you had Batman on a series of pages where it's just in a monologue, onomatopoeia punches, and him screaming "Jason!" It's striking to have him not really being able to scream in the same way. Instead, he's just talking himself throughout the process until he gets out and ends up getting himself crushed. So it's all preview for what's going to happen, and as we see him have to formulate new strategies to take out the upper rogues, like Bane's number ones and number twos, we're seeing that little elements of things that he's just about working on these guys because he's so determined to get to the end. But you can see already that he's maxed out, and all these little previews for how Bane fights, his ways out aren't going to help him. He's not going to be able to use smoke bombs when he's getting bear crushed or anything like that.
Yeah.
He's not going to have it all, and like in a way he's expelling just everything at this point, and not realizing, or I guess realizing and having no option, knowing that he's going to have to take on Bane and he's going to be well weaker,
completely spent. And like, this is just like the art in this one as well, like, because this is Graham Nolan with Scott Hanna on inks, and like this is like such beautiful, like the underwater scenes. Like there's this one panel where Batman is kind of like diving and doing like front crawl underwater with his rebreather in, and like I just love that panel so much. It's just so gorgeous with the greens and the underwater, like in the river water and everything, and the intensity of like, you know, the whole situation, and the intensity in Batman's kind of like actions here, where he's like trying to open the hatch to get the mayor out, and then like Bullock figuring the mayor for dead with you know, just saying, like, Bullock doing what Bullock does and just being a complete brute. And it's just gorgeous, all of it. It's absolutely fantastic. And then obviously at the end of this issue we get the gauntlet, and we've also got the as a side part to this story, we've also got the ventriloquist reunited with Scarface. And like there's this whole thing as well with Batman kind of like trying to steal some sleep on top of a building, and the birds turning up, and just, you know, like it's so calm and serene, and like almost as if he's ready for death kind of thing. Like, this is it. This is the end. And then you see that hand reach over and grab him, and there's just such this ending energy to it. This whole thing, that this is the crux of it. This is where it all comes to a head, and like the breaking of the bat is not simply what Bane does to Batman in the issue that follows this. The breaking of the bat is what begins here. In fact, the breaking of the bat has already begun. The breaking of the bat started in Prelude to Knightfall. It's now, it's now done. This is it. This is the crescendo. So we've got this gauntlet that he runs with Bane's men, with Trog first of all. And then this is where you've got like another rib going, like a wet snap in my side has to be a rib, as if he's got any ribs left at this point. And he manages to take down Trog with the gas. And then he barely survives that. And then he comes up against Zombie. He manages to best Zombie using his wits, using his cape. And then actually, that's delightful. Actually, that is a delightful little bit of slapstick there, where he uses his cape to trick Zombie, and then grabs his ankles from behind and makes him face plant. I do enjoy that. And then it just at this point as well, he gives a smile, like he gets like a little bit of joy out of that because it felt good. Apparently, he says it feels good in his inner monologue, and it's almost as if he's got like a little bit of second wind behind him now. And then he comes up against Bird, and he encounters some difficulty here against the Rod Stewart lookalike because he's fighting, but obviously Bird is quite a handy guy, handy hand-to-hand combatant, and he's giving Batman some trouble, and then Batman has completely lost it at this point. He's screaming as he's punching Bird. He's like, Bane, who is he? What does he want? Answer me. I guess he would answer you if he had any teeth left, Batman. But yeah, I mean, so let's pick apart the gauntlet a little bit more, because I feel like this is a bit that needs discussion. So Marv, what about you and the gauntlet here?
Well, with the gauntlet, there's not a super large amount that I could add more than what you've said. I will jump back quickly to Joker in the tunnels, because one of the things that I love about that, again, well-trod road, we've already talked about that, but what I like about that section is that it's like a perfect fusion of the two halves of Joker. Like, more so, I was going to say as much as, but more so than you get in The Dark Knight, because it's like super fun-loving. I'm just an agent of chaos Joker, but also I've got the layout of these tunnels memorized. Scarecrow, like, don't worry, I know where all the escape hatches are. I've got rocket launchers set up. This is a plan that I have. It's organized chaos, so it's like it's just a brilliant little snippet of the best of Joker, like prime Joker. Yeah. So I love that part of it, and obviously, the Jason Todd stuff, brilliant. One thing I love about the escape from the tunnels, like that page that you mentioned with Bruce swimming with the rebreather, it made me loop back to Venom.
Yes,
because it's like he even has like, I don't know if it's a purposeful illusion, but obviously you have like Batman trying to lift the boulder to save the little girl in Venom, and like his internal monologue there is like, Kroll sounds scared, he's not really a weak man, he's a fairly strong one pushed beyond his limits, I ignore mine, and that's a separate panel on its own for that line. And it just makes me think, someone about to drown underwater, Batman having to use his wits and his strength to get him out of it. It's almost like we've looped back to square one in this whole saga.
And he ain't going to let it happen a second time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I love that. But with the gauntlet itself, I do love that it is, strength, skill, and speed. It's like these three separate tests before he gets to Bane.
And what was it I said earlier? Because we were talking, I mentioned something about this earlier when we were chatting, like prior to the show, and I said it's like when you get bad guys show up, like a new group of bad guys show up in a shonen anime. And they've all got like a gimmick or something, and it's like it's the showcase, as it were. So moving on from the gauntlet, a tired, battered, defeated Batman makes it back to the cave, and he's like, notices something. There's something off. There's the pit of my stomach goes at this point, because this is the bit where, like, when I'm reading this, I the nausea's there, and I'm like, oh shit, because he's back at where's Alfred? Where's Alfred? We're back at the cave. Where's Alfred?
the fact that he has just thrown a dressing gown over the costume and has gone back into Wayne Manor in the Batman costume, like sacrilege, things he would fire a Robin for. He just doesn't. He doesn't have the energy for secrecy anymore.
Yeah. I also love that he's, like when you're drunk on a night out and you suddenly find your way back home. Like, I don't remember how I got back, but I somehow made it. He's like in that exhausted drunk mode.
A fugue state.
Yeah.
Oh man, Leon, what about you? What about you on this portion here?
Yeah, I think it's a great setup for the next issue because, like I said before in my sort of rundown of the issue, it is basically all points have led to here now, and it's such a violation on many levels. Like Marv said, it's a violation on Batman in Wayne Manor, and then secondly, it's a violation on Bane, just all out, fully baned, just chilling in his hallway.
Yeah,
it's wrong.
He's attacked Alfred at this point. Alfred's down and out, and Bane is just standing there, and he's just. And I love that final page with like that voice. It's him. It's you. It is you, and it's just it's so ominous, and it like the pit of my stomach just goes the minute Batman gets back to Wayne Manor, because you know what's happened, and you know that he's let himself slip so far that Bane has managed to do this to him. And it's just so like this is the point where it just gets so harrowing and nauseating, like watching this happen, watching Batman's downfall drawn out. I mean, like the Superman one doesn't last this long. You know?
Yeah, I was going to come back to that because we talked about that last episode. But it's so much better done here than it is in Death of Superman. So much, so
violent, so drawn out, so intense,
and psychological as well. More than just he got punched to death. It's just it's a deconstruction of a man.
Yeah, it literally unbuilds the Batman. He literally breaks him in. He doesn't just break him physically. This is what we keep saying. He breaks his soul. He breaks the idea of Batman for all of Gotham. And he just completely shatters the whole thing. And this is why I feel that Bane is actually, one of the more, the if not the most dangerous villain in Batman's rogue gallery. And you've got like this whole, I mean, like you can understand how this became like the I mean, like they've never managed to adapt this fully into a movie. I would love them to. I really would. And like you can see like when you watch The Dark Knight Rises, you can like the inspiration. This book is clearly the inspiration for The Dark Knight Rises.
I do wish that, because in the book we earlier see that Bane knows that Bruce is Batman, and I kind of wish we didn't get that until this scene.
Yeah,
because similarly in, say, The Dark Knight Rises, it is cool when Bane just knows he's Bruce Wayne, and we haven't had any setup of that so far.
Yeah,
it is chilling, because there is a thing I still have with superheroes, but where my whole life until like the MCU, it was always such a thing. Their mask, their secret identities. It made me feel sick if like someone found out, and there was so much tension in comics and movies and TV shows and stuff about people finding out that like having like his greatest foe now basically in his home is such a violation that if that was the reveal that like, I know, but for us this has kind of been an inevitable build-up because we've seen so much of it.
Batman's march towards his grave. And like this is another point where I almost wish like they had killed him for the impact. Killed him and brought him back somehow instead of just leaving him broken.
I completely disagree with that, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
I think it works so much better because purely for the fact that Batman is just a man, it is much more impactful for someone who works so hard to be at the peak of physical condition, to be the best a man can be while being a fundamentally mentally broken person, to be mentally and physically broken but left alive, than it would be for Batman to die and go into a Kryptonian healing coma and come back and defeat his clone.
I definitely vouch for this as well.
I agree, but like I feel like what they originally wanted to do to kill him and bring him back, I can feel the original bones of that through what I'm reading now, and I feel like I would want to see how they would do that. And it's like the intensity of it isn't lost with Batman. I want to walk back what I said actually, because the intensity of it isn't lost with Batman merely being broken, because that's the whole point of this, isn't it? He's utterly destroyed. He's not dead. He's utterly destroyed. Like, he may as well no longer exist, which is fantastic. But like, so we're moving now into the issue. We are now at Batman 497, which is the issue with the cover with Batman kind of like snapped backwards over Bane's knee. Bane, this hulking man, just glaring straight out of the cover at the reader. And we come on to the issue, Broken Bat. The issue, this is drawn by Jim Aparo, and it's just the exhaustion he manages to cram into Bruce's face. And when Bruce comes out from behind the grandfather clock and he finds Alfred on the floor and he sees Bane, and they have the conversation with Bane, talking about how Batman's mask no longer serves a purpose and how he knows who he is, and the venom. And then you see the fear in Batman's eyes, the venom derivative, that one panel, the fear in Batman, the fear on Batman's face. Like, he's so unprepared at this point. There's nothing left of him. He is nothing. He's a man in a dressing gown.
and he fully doesn't comprehend his villain. Like, he's like, you'd kill just to rule this city? Like, he doesn't understand. Yeah. And then, like, Bane has to explain his philosophy to him. Yeah,
Bane's like, no. I want to prove I'm better than you, kind of thing, is the crux of it. And then Bane sort of like pumps himself up, and then we get the fight. Like, Batman's just like, okay, one more time. So whatever's left inside him, he musters it, and he pulls the cowl on.
And like, before you carry on, I love the fact, like, the paneling, the structure, the page construction, because everything about this is set up to almost, I mean, even if you are feeling the doom and you're like, okay, this is Superman versus Doomsday, this is the final fight where they both punch each other to death, and Bane's going to come out of this with like one broken arm and a broken nose, but he's still going to win. Like, it's like Batman shaking off the dressing gown, he flips over the cowl, he jumps up one more time, and you flip the page, and boom, like, he's nearly had his neck broken with one punch. It's so defeating. Like, as a reader, you look at this and you're like, oh fuck, it's over. Like, any hope I had is gone. This is done.
And this is it. I feel ill reading this sometimes. Like, it's just, this is the power this book has over me. And it's incredible. Like, him, do you see the panel by panel, you see Batman's face change as he steals himself. He pulls the hood over, and then wham, that's it. Bane, just one strike, sends Batman flying. And then throughout this torturous beatdown that Batman's taking, while Alfred just has to watch, we're getting like interspersed kind of like memories of Batman, like kind of like swimming in his own memories. His life flashing before him as Bane is like crushing him.
But the sad part of that is it's not even his life, it's like the last 4 days.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's like all of like his like the breakout at Arkham, him dealing with the Black Mask and all the things that we talked about.
Ruffle's favourite enemy, Metalhead.
Yeah. Metalhead. All the things that we went through and talked about in our prelude episode, Venomized Riddler, the gangs where he was, and where there was like the huge gang war, and he was in the midst of all that. All the while, we've got this his last words, as it were, almost this inner monologue of Batman, like saying that he's all worn out, all strength stretched and sapped, washed in weakness. Nothing but the mind's desperate urge to get off the floor and strike back.
And that panel where, like, Batman, a man who punched Guy Gardner in the face and knocked him out, a Green Lantern, he punched this man in the sternum and he doesn't move. Like, Batman is done. Batman, he's a wisp. He's a specter, a phantom of a man. And, like, even though the proportions are slightly wrong, it's cinematically wrong. Bane is just entirely imposing for a reason so in that panel.
Yeah. It's like on, like, Fist of the North Star levels, isn't it? Like, it really is. But, like, yeah, even when every uphill effort is wasted and futile, reality itself smashed and splintered like the rude death of an impossible dream. I love this monologue. I'm gonna have to, like,
It's funny though, because Batman's a guy who, like, he lives in his own head a lot, and he's so self-serious, but also, like, he has a romance for his own deeds in some ways. So, like, it's kind of fitting that even in what could possibly be his last moments, like, part of his energy is devoted to his own monologue, and, like, he's being thrown down the stairs of to the Batcave and, like, beaten up among his souvenirs that he, like, takes so much pride in. And, like, to go back to the touch point of, like, the Nolan films, like, the only reason I really know this story is because of how everyone says that it's the inspiration for The Dark Knight Rises. And I didn't realize, like, how, like, I thought that the scene in that film where this moment occurs is fine. Like, it's, it's well crafted and whatever, and it's iconic. But it's so much better living it, like, the violation, like, as Leon said, like, the violation of Bane coming into Wayne Manor and then kicking him down the stairs into the Batcave. Like, that has so much more weight, and it makes me realize, like, they sometimes when they in these films they crib some really iconic aesthetics or moments, but they're really missing a trick by not having that as part of it, or at least, like, I don't know. I was just really impressed by how impactful that felt in this comic.
Definitely, 100%.
And this is why I wanted you to read it, Ray. This is precisely why I wanted you to read it, and why I'm doing this series to highlight this book, because it's just incredible storyline, incredible work. Like, just all the while this monologue while Batman's just getting, like, smashed to pieces in the cave by Bane, like, and it's
bouncing him off of everything in the cave that means something to him.
Exactly, yeah. and like, Batman going back through each one of the rogues that he's taken down at each point throughout the rest of this book, and then, like, finally thrown against the cabinet where he keeps Jason's costume, the memorial to Jason Todd, and he's on the floor and kind of, like, coming back around from the punch, holding up Jason's mask. Jason, Robin, like, can't give in, not now, no matter how hurt, can't let him win, can't surrender to the blessed relief of ending it all. And Alfred at this point has managed to make his way over to Tim to ask Tim for help, basically. But at this point, it's already too late. Batman is this torn, tattered, just shell of a man, doing all he can to hold Bane off, but there's nothing. He can't do anything. Bane is just toying with him at this point. And we get this kind of, like, this combo montage of punches and kicks. More of Batman helping people and being helped. It gave it his all long ago. All in a losing cause, and I'm done. With a final swack.
Just
I am
stalactites in his side. Just,
I know. Bane's just
savage beating.
It is such a savage beating. It really is. I am Bane, and I could kill you. But death would only end your agony and silence your shame. Instead, I will simply break you. And that is that. That is Batman Broken. That is the iconic panel. One of my favourite panels in all comics. Bane bringing Batman down and, you know, smashing his spine against his knee with the earth-shattering cracked.
And the panels just splintered.
Yeah, oh my god, it's beautiful. And it's like shattered glass, isn't it? The panel with the edges. It's like, and this orange and this heat, this orange and red, this heat of this pain that comes out of the colours in this panel. And
the fact that he brings Batman down, but also raises a knee instead of going down to his knees.
I know. Mm-hmm. It's like,
it's a flare.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, I don't feel like anybody but Aparo could have drawn that and given it that kind of like, because the whole thing as well, like with Aparo being the Batman artist that he was, and all these other Aparo Batman stories that I've read, and like up to this point, like you are seeing the death of your Batman, I guess. It's the death of this is like the end of, I know he's not dead, he's just broken, but this is the end of my Batman. Like, this is Aparo's Batman being snapped in half. It's like, and then he's just, the next page, broken. He just drops him on the floor and done.
And like I said before to you, that duft has lived in my head for the whole of my life.
Yeah. Similar to me with the spine shattering cracked. Like that is just like I can hear it. I can hear the bone splinter. It's horrible. And Batman is broken, and that is like when I first read that. Like, and when you first read that, it really does. It makes you feel like you feel it in your gut. It's horrible. And I mean, imagine they tried to imagine being there at the time and being an avid Batman reader and not knowing what's coming and then seeing that. Imagine. And then you've got to wait like for the next issue. Like, imagine. Imagine.
That's the thing. Like. I think this issue is near perfect. It's like the perfect culmination of everything that's happened to this point, but it trims all the fat from any of the previous issues, including the prelude. And that's what I really like here. It's so clean, and as we like following Batman as he's just being like broken and reflect on the past, all of it and all the hits, the onomatopoeia, everything that Bane says, it all works in concert with each other so effectively that like I think this issue makes everything you've read up to this point worth it.
Exactly. So like, and then moving from there, which is the last issue that I wanted to cover, which brings us into the end of this episode and also the beginning of the next section of Batman Knightfall, which would be Who Rules the Night. And this is Detective Comics 664.
Great cover.
Yep, great cover. Batman, Bane holding Batman's limp and lifeless body, and Bane holding Batman's limp and lifeless body inside the cover above the city, throwing Batman down, like just you know, like presenting the broken body of Batman to all of Gotham, and Batman is no more. I have destroyed him. I rule these streets. I rule Gotham. And with that, he releases Batman's body. Here is your hero, your protector. Take him and bury him. This is like Bane having his kind of like, you know, this is your king. Your king is dead. I am now your ruler. And throwing Batman to the floor, and Batman just lying. This full page of Batman lying limp and lifeless, and people recoiling in horror. But there's that one guy wearing the backwards red baseball cap who's smirking with a lit cigarette.
Yeah.
And it's just like, there's just something so unceremonious about it, and something so like just horrific and gut-wrenching about it. It's just so horrible, and I think this is where we're going to end the episode, because I only wanted to cover this issue at this episode
for
at this
that
point in the
image,
episode, purely for that image. Yes.
Yeah. Same.
the next part of the issue we can cover next time, because that's when the recovery begins, and we get the ambulance turns up, which of course is actually Tim and
Jean-Paul and Alfred
in disguise, just to take Batman's broken body away and get him back to the cave to try and help him. And just the horror of Batman being thrown to the floor, just like this whole, like, Bane has truly taken Gotham. Bane has truly broken the Bat. And
sorry, I'm probably jumping ahead. Finish your sentence.
That's it.
No.
That's it. His ribs are sticking out of his suit.
This is what I was going to say. Like this full page image feels like the mission statement for the entire story. Like the reactions of the crowd, the varied reactions. You've got that old man looking in wonder. Like you said, you've got that street hood. He's probably got a couple of broken bones from like one time that Batman roughed him up 5 years ago. Like, now you get yours. You've got like the baby crying, the black guy at the top of the page, just out of his mind. Like, how can this happen to my hero? The woman just in tears with her back turned. But like, Batman is just all impossible angles. He's got ribs sticking out, like his abdominal muscles are wrapped round to his fucking sides. Like that one leg that is just turned so much that it hurts to look at. It's such a powerful image. Like if this was the last, like you were saying, my book is split into two halves. If this was the last page that you saw in the first half, I'd be distraught.
It should be the last page that you see in the first half. It should absolutely be the last page that you see in the first half, which is why I've chosen to end this episode here. But yeah, it's like
I'm so glad for that.
it's like if we were doing the Greg cut of Knightfall Part 1, it would end on this page. Like chapters and issues, whole issues be damned. I would just cut it there, because that's where it needs to end. That is the broken Bat. That is Batman being thrown down through into the pit of demons by Satan presiding over it all, kind of thing. That's it. That's the broken Bat, and it's harrowing and it's gut wrenching, and it's just this is where we will pick up next time, and this is where we will continue to discuss the breaking of Batman. Any final words on from Ray and Leon regarding this panel? We'll go with Ray first.
I can't really add much to what you guys have said about that specific panel. It's super harrowing. I love that it gets, we get a full page view of this thing. But I wanted to talk about the page before, where like Bane throws him onto the top of what I can only imagine is a Bob Kane art museum. I think that's a cool nod.
Yeah.
Right. And I love that he gets kind of like, for as serious as this all is, Bane doesn't throw him directly off the roof onto the ground. He sort of like, he gives him a Chinese martial arts fall, where he drops onto a canopy and then onto another canopy and then onto the floor. Like I don't know. I thought that was some cool touches. I don't really know what to make of it. I just thought the kineticism of it is cool.
Yeah,
feels very like Hollywood or like movie like.
It's incredible. And it's that is the end of Batman Knightfall Part 1. Leon, you got anything to add?
I'll just echo what you guys all said. I actually really like the panel right before that one, where it's him held up over the city. I love how theatrical that is, and how ridiculous and comic booky it is. It's like ancient Greece or something. Like,
it's
Sparta.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like this is Bane getting his Killmonger moment.
Yeah,
but it's really good perspective as well, because like you get of the city street from like peeking between like Batman's body and Bane's head and stuff. Like it's pretty well laid out.
But I got more to say on this on next episode, but Bane's a bitch.
Yeah. I mean, we are going to pick up on this next episode, and rest assured, dear listener, Bane gets his.
And he is indeed a bit of a bitch.
But even without alluding to that stuff yet, just over the course of everything we've read so far, Bane's a bitch, but I'll go into more detail next episode.
I mean, just as the newcomer to it, like, I think I agree, and I think I know why. Like, the fact that all of this effort to weaken him to a point where he can break Batman. Like, if he wasn't such a bitch, he would be facing him head on. But that's my point so far, and we'll see where it goes.
I don't know.
That is the one thing, is that, like, it's a genius plan. It's a plan that, like, none of the other Arkham inmates and whatever have ever come up with to, like, loose the hordes against him, to weaken him to the point that he can be taken out. But at the same time, it's like, if you're such a badass, you could just walk in and do this on day one. Why would you need to make him run such an extensive gauntlet and then lord it up as if you did this all
you did it all?
Yeah. But again, also, like, bringing Batman again back to that almost mythic status, like, what it takes to bring the Batman down. This is what it takes to bring the Batman down. Like, and I guess
I suppose it's that old meme of, like, Batman can take out any enemy if he's given prep time. It's like Bane took out his prep time.
Yeah. Exactly, yeah. That's how Bane took down Batman. And this is what it takes to bring the Batman down. This is the amount of comics we've read up to this point. And this is it took all of that to bring the Batman down. Like, that's how much will and, like, strength of character Batman has, because even if his body was giving way at one point his body had given way, but his mind was still on it. And it's just, the whole thing is just like, just an incredible amount of suffering. And yeah, it's like the darkest hour of the Bat. This is true hell. This has been a masterpiece in execution, and nothing else comes close to making you feel the drama and loss with every blow that lands. And he's not dead, but it feels more than death of a man. It is the death of the spirit, of the soul, of the ideal that is Batman. He's just left to fall, like, to this ungrateful city. A man who gave everything for the city he loved, left bloodied on the streets. So on, a man smirks. It's just so much painful and so much more rustier and so much more unforgiving than simply death. And yeah, it's just, and that's where we will leave it. And we will pick up on that exact panel next time with Batman lying broken in the street. That has been Batman Knightfall Part 2. I hope you've enjoyed that, and if you want to join the discussion, if you're reading Knightfall along with us, please get involved to let us know what you think, and we hope to bring you Batman Knightfall Part 3 sometime in the near future. This time with Part 3, we will be going into the section of the story called Who Rules the Night? And so that has been Ace Comicals. You can find us at www.acecomicals.co.uk, which it's not .co.uk, is it? It's .com. How long have I been doing this? Whose website is that? It's acecomicals.com, where you can find pretty much everything we do, and everywhere we are is all on this page. Anywhere you can listen to us, anywhere. We are available to listen on pretty much anything you can listen to podcasts on. You can find us on Twitter at Ace Comicals, which is where we're most active. That's our biggest social media outlet. Get in touch at us, DM us, just get involved with the conversation. Leon, where can we find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Leon Everett.
And Ray, where can we find you?
Also on Twitter at Monkeh, MOONKEH.
Marvin, where can we find you?
On Twitter at Marvin Lafayette, and as many episodes as I've guested on, I should really start specifying that it's Marvin with a Y, not an I. And also on Instagram, Marv Lafayette 84.
Yes, and thanks again for Marv for joining us for this this epic Knightfall breakdown that is going to last for the rest of this year, I believe. Because we are going to do this, and we're going to do it properly, Marv. We're going to give it the love it deserves. Because I think this comic has lived, especially for me and you, this comic has lived in our minds rent free for long enough.
Exactly. For as long as we've had imaginations, this has taken up our imaginations.
Yes, exactly. And every drunken conversation we've ever had about these books is now becoming a podcast. So yeah, thank you for joining us today, everybody. That is Ace Comicals over and out.